Hi, everyone. So I was, like earlier, I was measuring some of these 79-minute intervals, and especially off like the mid bars, which would be roughly like 38 to 39 minutes. Where's Brendan? I just found them to be pretty accurate from like the times that they cleared. So kind of like when they cleared like back here, especially off like the Zenal, I was gonna say channel, off the zone to the channel. Okay, so like back in here. They're slightly linked to highs. Not entirely, but that's okay. It's more so for like structure breaks. I don't know if you can see that. Like off these specific structure breaks in here. And here, like you can kind of see when like they cleared structure here. Same with this here, like 38 minutes would be like roughly right in here. And mainly off like these structures right in here. I don't know if you guys can see this. Do you guys see that? Like this. So I've been measuring a lot of these this afternoon. Okay. I do have some very important flips coming up right here around 3:04. I should probably mark the 3. I didn't do these manual measurements here just yet, but you can kind of see like off 39 minute, there was an odd back right in here. You can kind of see how structure broke right there. And then off these little structural holds right here, you can kind of see how they held range like right in here. Same with this here, 38 minute, 39 minutes, like kind of hard to see, but do you guys see that? Like kind of like right back in here. So these were some calculated times of day, like back in this range in here. Okay. And specific to like these high ranges. This was also the midpoint. Kind of like right off here. You can use 38, 39 minute intervals. Do you guys see that? Yes. I didn't really do too much time theory earlier, so I just want to show you guys. Okay, so kind of like right in here. Do you see it? The actual flip right here was right at 145, so it would have been linked to this 221, 224 period. Do you guys see this? I should probably shade that in a different color so it's easier to see. Like right here. Okay, so I do think this is pretty important because these were some pretty calculated times here. Okay, and this is kind of the cutoff. So the cutoff is approaching in this window right here. Okay, so right before 3. So I really want us to try breaking, clearing ahead of 3 here. Okay. Let me know if you guys can see this. Look at that stick break here. 248 getting a really nice clearance break here ahead of 3 o'clock. I wanted to jump on before this period starts just because this is going to be a very important time of day for a lot of these structures that are slowly starting to break. I hope you guys held some of the contracts too. So I did draw a mock just now, and I think it worked out pretty nicely with what I was looking for. I kind of wanted to see if there was any smaller frames. I didn't really see any, but I figured we could probably use that 38, 39 minute just because I know we're not technically tracking those, but I think they make some good. They make some really good frames to kind of watch this afternoon, and also in accordance to like some of these earlier structure breaks that we had. Okay, so 2:48 p.m. was the 39-minute flip. Okay, which can really help in terms of like these structure breaks right here. Next flip is at 2:54. The really important period, guys, is between 2:58, 3:04. Okay, I want to focus a little bit on my positions because I want to make sure that I get the best covers possible. I really hope you guys help. Because the goal was they could either snap this area here above 6-1. The mock was that they basically, I don't know if you guys can see, that they try getting here, hold here, break. Okay, they could either pull or push. And just before 3, so they had a really nice push here. That's good. That actually gives us higher odds of getting 6-4, 6-6. This is exactly what we were drawing before. The break, the hold, the structure, the potential break of 6-1. So here is going to be like the deciding factor if they want to take this higher, okay, to 6-4. If they want to bring it back down to 5-7, they could technically afford to bring it to 5-5 and then continue, but a lot of this is obviously going to be relative to these stick breaks. There's definitely high odds here, so if they want to hold and then continue, they can. Okay. Yeah, me too. I just ate late and I got very sleepy. But I would have only taken it, I would have gotten up if we failed 7,550. Oh, what they held 7,553, 7,555 nicely. Hello. Honestly, really good trades today, guys. Tesla also broke 420. We'll see if we get that 423 target today. That's what I was looking for, but I don't know. No, it was good liquidity here, but we'll see. Bit of a reduction stick here at 254. The odds are highest around 5-8, 3 in this 304 flip. 304 is linked to overnight lows. There's a period between 327 and 330, and then some after the bell around 406. This is definitely a huge spot, you guys, like this 6-1 area. So, I mean, I don't feel inclined to not take anything off here. Like this was our next target, was the 61 to 6150. 756 was my next target. So this is perfect. Above here is closer to 6-4. We already went over all the targets this morning, so we don't really have to go over that again, but these little tiny reductions here ahead of 3, we'll see. If they can hold off 5-8 like they're doing and clear 6-1 before 3, then odds are pretty good that we can see these 70s today. Like I said, as long as it's not too high, because again, this 31 day going green might not be the best case scenario. That would be breaking above 70, 75, 85. So I'm okay with 60s and 70s. I'm not really sure if I want to see 80s though, unless they can keep pushing tomorrow. Okay. Where are you going?
I have an appointment. What did I trip on? 5.
5. Sorry guys, sister is just stealing my hairspray. Literally almost tried to walk in quietly and tripped and almost fell face planted to the floor. It's been raining so bad here. It was raining terribly yesterday, but I feel like today's not as bad, which is why I wanted to walk. You guys talk about walking, but and not going for a walk, but you guys live in the States where it's always nice out, okay? If I see a glimpse of sun and no rain or no snow, I want to be outside. It was raining so much yesterday. It's been the rainiest summer this year. We only had 5 decent days so far, all of June. It's rained literally 18 days this month, if not more. Every single day it's been raining, which is so annoying. Today it wasn't raining though. I don't think it's gonna rain right now. I think it's gonna start raining after 5. And I got eaten alive by mosquitoes yesterday, all over my face. I got bitten twice on my face yesterday. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I could walk in 100 degrees, because what is that, 35 degrees Celsius or something? That's way too hot. But right now it's 21 degrees here. Oh yeah, see, it's going to start raining, Ashley, at 3, so I wanted to try getting a walk in before it rains, because then it's not going to stop raining until 9 p.m. The only good thing is the sun doesn't set till literally 11 o'clock at night here. But 21 degrees? What is that in Fahrenheit? That's perfect walking weather. It's not too hot and it's not too cold. I think that's 70 degrees or something. It's obviously very cool for summer. This is the coldest June we've ever had. But it makes for good walking weather minus the mosquitoes. I'm gonna have to make sure I spray myself today because I don't want to get eaten alive again. Yeah, it's gonna start raining after 3, so I'm I wanted to try walking. I mean, honestly, I could manage from my phone. My contracts that are left, I don't even have that many left anyway for today. The ones I have for Thursday, I could just leave them, but I only have 3 contracts left for today. But of course, right when I get up to leave is when they were gonna break to 6-1. I already have some sell orders set anyway. Why would it be a gamble though? Today's honestly pretty, I think it's pretty straightforward. We know that we can still see some of these mid 60s, but trading off these ranges here is pretty tough. Like, personally, I wouldn't trade off these areas. Okay, like my longs were off of like morning range around 75.01 to 75.11, and then that 75.21 back test. Off of here, the best area to long is off like 7.4. Sorry, not 7.4. 7.549, 7.551. Anything above that is kind of risky. I mean, unless you have like a good sustainment above 75.55, but then you have to be very cautious that you don't stall 6-1. Does that make sense? Which doesn't really give you much room. I never trade if it's only within a 6-point range. That's a general rule of thumb that I have. It has to be minimum 12 to 13 points. Okay. So for me, I would take a trade off 79.50 to potentially get 70, 75, 62. Does that make sense, you guys? But like off 75, 55, 58, and you could stall 6-1. Like, I wouldn't do that. That's just not the trade for me, especially if we haven't even triggered 6-1 breaks yet. Had we maybe tested 6-1 beforehand, let's say, okay, so let's say we tested 6-1 back in here, like back in here, right here. If we had tested 6-1 here, you guys, I for sure would think of maybe taking a trade off 6-5 right here, okay? And the reason being is because they probably would have taken out 6-1 and taken it to maybe 6-4, okay? 6-5. Does that make sense? So it's not that these areas mean that you can't get like a decent trade. Like, you can. It's just you'd have to over manage it. Does that make sense? Like, if I were to take a long right off of here or something, okay, here, okay, that's a great quick trade, but then now I have to manage to make sure it holds 5-8. Does that make sense? You cannot afford going back to 5-5. Whereas if you're long off here, you could afford going back to 5-5. But off of here, you can't. You have to hold 5-8. So it's just more, for me, it's not about not being a good trade, because I do think if you hold 75.55, 75.58, and trigger 75.61, you could get a back test of 75.58. Holding 75.58 could get you a clear break of 75.61 and push you to 75.64, 75.66. But then you're over managing. Like, you have to make sure that you're triggering and timing that, right? So something like this has to clear by 3:04. Does that make sense? So we're 10 steps ahead of everyone else because we know it has to break by 3:04 p.m. So we already know what time of day it has to break anyway. So we're kind of in the matrix here. But so 75.61, yes, if it can clear by 3:04 p.m. after holding 7.55859, perfect. Okay, that's a great trade. Does that make sense? But it's more about the managing aspect of it. For me, because I'm also streaming, typing, talking, whatever, it's very hard for me to like sit there and manage these kinds of trades. And I prefer range. That's just how I am. But that would be the trade. You'd have to have a very tight stop around 7.556, 5.7 maybe, if you're going to do something like off of here. Okay. And mainly because they didn't trigger 6-1 back in here. Had they triggered 6-1 back in here, your odds were a lot higher of actually clearing 6-1 here and triggering 6-4. Thanks, James. So we'll see. We'll see if this 3:04 gives us a break of 6.150. There is clearly a reduction stick at 5.4. 3 o'clock did a good job holding here. 3:04 is the more important flip that I had this afternoon. So, and then I kind of stopped measuring those 38-minute, 39-minute intervals, but we can still go ahead and do that. I think this aligns with these ranges here too. Yeah, it does. Like close to here. And then you can obviously measure them off the high range that hit. So I'm already watching 327, but I mean, it's pretty interesting that this is also now aligned with these highs. So you could maybe measure these high rate ratios off 250. Okay, you guys. So I already knew that 327 to 330 was a calculated period, but this kind of just suffices that even more because you can kind of see these 38, 39-minute intervals. So yeah, right between 330. Okay, 38, 39 minutes. So between roughly 326 to 330. And the 38-minute, I think, flips at 332, which we can just kind of track. So 304 sustaining off of 7559. Can keep this in play until that 326, 332 period, but again, like I said, if you're long off these areas here in the 50s, you have to kind of micromanage these positions. Is this enough to be considered a max range for us today? What do you guys think? Yeah, like the market definitely doesn't really owe us too much more above here. It would be nice if it did, like maybe got to like 6.4, 6.5 or something, but I think today was honestly a pretty easy trading session. So most important aspects today to trigger, what do we need to do in order to trigger a break of 7.56150 and try testing 7.56465? What would have to happen at this point? Two things. Trying to keep the chart relatively clean, so what are the two things that would have to happen here? (9:36, 9:48) were really important times of day this morning too. That's around the time I took that first long. There were also some very important structural flips, you guys, for overnight lows. Okay, so this 9:36 this morning, you see how it held right here, and then 9:48. These were linked to overnight lows. So that was another reason why I felt like more inclined to take a long there, because they'll probably hold. What are some conditions that we'd have to have, you guys, in order to test at this point? I already gave you guys them, but just reiterate them for me. What would you have to do? I actually already sent it too, but there, I'll paste it again here. What would the written conditions of this be? What would you have to do at this point? You would have to obviously hold 5, 5, 5, 6, 5, 7, 5, 8, right? There's no way that you can get back and clear these areas without holding this range at this point. Remember how we talked about that? And remember how we talked about a tiny reduction this morning? Like, not by much, but by a little bit. So kind of like this right here. That's a really nice stick break here, guys, at off 308. And again, ahead of these upcoming points in the day here, which is what's keeping odds alive for those 70, 75, 68, and potentially those 70s to trigger today. I'm okay with 70s. I feel like 80s might be a little bit risky for us, so we'll see. But 6-8 and 7-1 were the areas of confluence for max ranges on the session today. There were odds of the 80s today, but they increased risk. So again, one last time as like a recap, that would be the equivalent of triggering an 88-point range. Okay, off lows is 75.70. it would be the equivalent of hitting a 66-point range right here, 68-point range off a session open, okay, session close, so that's what these are. It would be the same thing as hitting those core ratios of like 72, 75, 77, 78 points, those mid-core ratios off session open. Okay, so that's where these areas would come into play. And it would be the same thing as triggering 66, 68 points off session, real-time session open. Okay, so this is why these areas have a very, very, very high level of confluence. Off of today's real-time session open, triggering that 76, 77, 78 point ratio would be closer to like 7.9. Okay. And then we already talked about this. I don't really think they have an odd of doing that without news, but core ratios would be around our 76.11, which is obviously going to be our bigger spot for the week, but I didn't really think we had odds of doing that today. Like 7,600 would be exactly that 103 to 107 point ratio, okay? Or 115 points off open. I don't know if you guys can see that. So like this area here is pretty important, but I don't think that they would do that off today's session. And this is also the 66-point break off of yesterday's highs, is also linked to 7.1. Okay, so again, all of this, okay, gives us a reason why. This is also 173 points off of weekly lows. So 173 points is half of 346. Okay, so there's, again, a lot of reasons why these areas have such high confluence, but I'm just giving you guys just the common breakdown of it. Okay, so that's why I figured these could easily be some major areas of confluence for today's session. Even though we have odds of getting to 7.8, 7.9, 8.1, I'm not sure if it would be the healthiest for today's session, but these are the areas that had the highest amount of confluence for today, okay? Tesla getting a nice break to our 423 target. If anyone took that, I took calls for tomorrow on Tesla earlier this afternoon. That was actually a really clean break of that 423.72. That puts that 425.85, 426 in play. I don't know if anyone traded Tesla, but those were the targets on that one. Is everyone on the same page for ES targets? So holds of 7555, 7558, clearance of 7561 can net you 7566, 7568, 7570.5 to 7571.75 has the most confluence, okay? Clearance above that is closer to 7573, 7578. The window that had the most probability of triggering these core areas was around 324 to 330, 332. So we'll have to see. A lot of this is relative to how we react around this 6.4, 6.5 area, okay? Because this area here is linked to some of these real-time ranges. And I did post this morning and earlier this afternoon. And this was the first thing I posted when I started the session here today, but you guys can kind of read it over in the thread. Okay, so 75.50, this is it right here, 75.51 to 55.58. Overhead from the past, this needs to clear during mid-session. Clearing 75.50s during mid-session, avoiding heading back down to the channel, which we did do. Did we head back down to the channel? These are questions you have to ask yourself. Did we head back beneath 7544, 7549? This is how you keep conditions in play, guys. Did we? No. Did we head back beneath 7544, 7549? No, we sustained, right? Did we tag 7550 to 7555, 7558 during mid-session? Yes, okay. So all that leaves us to do is that's what gives us the highest odds of getting breaks to this range, okay? I do think 6-1 had some confluence too, though. We calculated that earlier, so I mean, you don't exclude 6-1, but 5-8 had a lot of confluence, right? That's what's going to give us the odds of getting a potential core break of 6-8, 7-1, 7-5 with a tiny probability of 7-9-8-1. What do you think is going to set the probability of the 75, 75, 75, 78, 75, 81 area? What would have to occur? This is where you guys are going to set the rest of the conditions for me. Now I want to know, okay? Now that we're at 75, 65, are they going to stall 6, 8, 7, 1? Or are they going to keep odds on the table for getting 7, 5, 7, 9, 7, 5, 8, 1, 8, 4, maybe even 8, 8? What would they have to do for that to be the case? I want to know what you guys think. And this was what I had said earlier this morning too. So while zone odds are super high, considering pressure off the 2-day frame, shorter week and month end, it can be probable relative to channel avoidance and means early mid-session clearance. Okay, so channel avoidance. Did we have channel avoidance? Did we avoid the channel? The channel is this. Did we avoid this afternoon? And staying stuck in here. This is the channel. Did they avoid here? Yes. Okay, so that's your first check. Okay? So channel avoided. Check mark. What would the next thing have to be? Right? We talked about this. So means early mid-session clearance. So I would say that they tagged the means. They didn't quite clear them early. So, you know what I mean? Like, so I would say means tested, aka 7555, 7558, 7561 during mid-session, but not cleared. Okay? So your conditions could be you probably have to clear the means by 3. Okay, like during this 3:30 interval. When would you have to trigger core? So 7571, 7568. This is what's going to give you the highest probability of getting those big breaks. Try not getting this wrong, you guys. I haven't sold any of my runners yet. Okay, I'm staying long and strong so that I don't sell too early, because if they're breaking these ranges and they're breaking them ahead of time, we could get those 75, 79, 75, 81 areas today, okay? Or potentially 88, okay? And like I said earlier, I was telling James and Justice, okay? Do you see what I was saying earlier? Longs off 7555 are okay, and off 7558 if you sustain 7558 and clear. Okay, 6-1, 6-4, 6-6, right? So it means you'd have to like micromanage so that you make sure that you don't stall. Because had they not sustained here, okay, in here, then they would have probably recycled that range back down. So this sustaining right here was very, 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 very important, okay? Especially ahead of 3 o'clock. So like I was saying before, you could do a trade-off here. The only thing is you have to really micromanage to make sure that they don't break this down, okay? So what point in time do you think is potentially the ideal area to get to these core breaks? Because if they don't, this is where range can start to be recycled. And you can already see the increase in volatility coming in here, right? Now you're starting to get like 4 point sticks. So what would be the case? What would you have to do for that to be the case? $7,566, guys, is a huge area. Obviously, where you guys cover is completely up to you. These are just max ranges for the session that I already had planned for today. You obviously don't have to hold for like max 7571 ranges or something like that. A lot of this is relative to your own entry, your own risk reward. Like everyone has different positions and different risk tolerance, right? But longs and covers off 7566 are definitely like a good spot to cover. Okay, so if you want to cover off 66, go ahead. If you want to wait till this 327 332 period to see if they trigger 71, okay. Okay, so 326 to 327 330 332. It started maybe as early as 324. This was a very important period for the session today that can keep it active until basically after the bell. Okay, so could we get zone entry today? Maybe not in real time, but could they do it after the session closes today? And then keep 7611, 7621, 3244 active for maybe tomorrow. That would be like that negation off avoiding that. The 30 days already flagging. It's more so of like some of these other time frames that would be at a risk if, you know, they didn't clear. 8 day, we already decided could engulf. Okay, we've already talked about this. 4 day was another engulfing time frame that we looked at, which flips over tomorrow. Okay, we did talk about this. I put it in the chat yesterday. Another outside bar scenario for the second, I think, was the 5 day. So this has until tomorrow. So this could be one reason why they could trigger the zone today or even tomorrow. And 7611 is aligned with this because the highs on this were 7612. Okay, that would be an outside bar. This one's another outside bar scenario that flips on the 6th. So the final trading day for this would be the 2nd since the 3rd is closed. Okay, and this would be a much wider range, obviously, of 7636. So this would be more so of like how we could trigger 7611, 7611 by tomorrow. Okay, 7622, 3244 by Thursday. Do you get what I'm saying? Think about price and time. Price and time. Price to structure. Structure to time. Okay, where you trigger today, how it can correlate to the following day. So obviously on the 2 day, we've already taken out this mid supply range. This is kind of the area that we're in right here. Okay. Someone posted to me on Twitter, does that mean we could get back to 7,500? Like, yes. Like 7,500 SPX? Like, yes, we can. That's exactly what that means, because that would be these calculated areas bringing us back. 324 was the earliest odd, guys, for a high of day retest here. And clearing core. 327 is extremely calculated, so we're going to have a very close watch at 326. I hope you guys made good money today too, like aside from this being a fun trade. I really hope you guys had like a good trading session today. What do you guys think? Let's put up a poll here. Clear 7568 by 327, 332 period. I'll set that to just 1 minute because I want to set a max range. Can you guys vote on that, please? Please vote because I want to set a max range before the last 15-20 minutes of the session today. I want to set a poll for max range. So Tesla, again, I'll reiterate, 423, 426 break can push it to 441. Okay, so 423, 426 on Tesla is a 441 break. Okay. This is a big spot for this one, so we'll have to see where it pins the close. Okay, thanks for contributing those points too. So again, we're hitting a very important period here in terms of clearing, breaking. This is where they can start recycling, making it pinnable. 7568, 70, 71 are very big spots for ES. I don't know why it keeps deleting them, but kind of close to this range in here. We stalled just beneath 68, which is that first core range. Again, these are more than enough to be considered a max range for the session today. So, like, by all means, if you think that you're good on whatever you've made, then just leave it at that and cover. If you want to play the last half hour, then go ahead. The bonus range is mainly above 7-1, okay, to closer to 7-9, 8-1, 8-4, 8-8, which again, I feel like the only way they could do that is if they clear this area here during this period. I would actually not prefer not getting those ranges today and staying closer to here, but normally I'd want that, but if that's going to be the case, then we have a lot of pressure to get 76.11 tomorrow. Does that make sense? So if we trigger these 75.70s today, we better trigger 76.11, 76.21 tomorrow, okay? And 76.32, 76.44 by the second. Like, I wouldn't want us to stop because then we'd have a lot of risk with some structures that are forming on wider time frames. Okay? So 327 still beneath the 64, 65. Again, I still think that that could keep some of this risk on. And this is where they could start capping range. Specifically if they stall during this period here. This is imbalance period too anyway, so I'm gonna just mark the 336 and our generic points in the day that we watch every day anyway. some reduction coming in. And these are likely linked to these areas here around 7.5, 7.8. Really good job today, guys. Okay, and good covers too if you took some off that 6.6, 6.4, 6.8 test. Those were really big spots for today. Again, we're super close to like a max range, so honestly, if you're holding, it's really if you just want to squeeze like every little bit of this, but this is definitely enough to be a max range. There was the most confluence around 7.1, okay, like this area here, but again, if they want to make this pinnable, this whole area here between 5.5, 50, 5.8, 6.1, 6.4, this is all pinnable, so they can, if they want to recycle range just to kind of keep it tight, then they can. And so far, this 327 to 330 period is keeping it pretty stuck from what I'm seeing. So they'd have to really try retracting and retracing back over 6.1 here around this 332, 336 period to keep those odds alive for the last 15, 20 minutes. I want to try finishing right at 2 today because I have a lot to do this afternoon. But you guys should have had a pretty good day. Try not to overtrade this. My biggest pet peeve is when we have things work exactly as planned, like 747981 hold, 7488 hold, 7495 close, 7495 7500 open, 7521 hold, you know what I mean? And then like you trigger 7555, 7558, 61, and then you still have people like somehow losing money on this because they just become greedy. Maybe they miss an entry, they chase things, and then or like they sell maybe like early in here and then they try, I don't know. It's like a lot of trading, guys, honestly, aside from understanding the trade, is literally just better management, okay? And controlling how you react to things, right? So if you sold here, okay, and a lot of this is psychological too, because notice how it stalled here, came back, and then boom, okay? Someone might have tried selling here, and then they see this and they might chase it here. Someone might have sold here, and then, you know, then they see it do this here, and then they maybe chase it in here. Then you see this. So a lot of how these things play out, honestly, sometimes is to kind of play with people's emotions. So you have to kind of be like the stronger person, because you don't want to be chasing or covering here, then regretting it, okay? Going back long in here, then regretting it, okay? Chasing it up here because you're pissed off that they hit here and you sold here. Does that make sense? And then entering in here, and then now you're like gambling to kind of like break back even to get back in here when these could be max ranges for the session today. This is how the market basically tricks you. So you have to be 10 steps ahead. And we essentially know what has to be done here. The one thing stands out to me, and I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but it stands out to me, and I don't think something specifically is standing out here, which is why there's some risk. Why is there some risk here? Something did not happen. There's something very specific that did not happen that we could still afford to have happen. And this is why there's still some risk. I'm going to focus on my positions for a bit while you guys answer that. Something specifically did not happen, which could still happen, that's leaving some risk. What is it? And this is what didn't happen yesterday in real time, which occurred overnight. Same thing right now. Hasn't quite happened yet, so it could still happen, especially on a 75, 66, 75, 88 stall. What is it? What hasn't happened that could still happen that could keep us at risk? Especially if they don't want to trigger 6871. I'll wait for you guys to answer that. Because this is one reason why there's some risk right now still. Because this actually hasn't occurred yet. Yeah, but there's something else that we didn't do. Pretty important point here coming up. They never triggered 75.55, you guys, okay? Back in here, remember how we could have afforded to come back to 5.5? I even drew it for you guys earlier, okay? That would have been healthier to trigger 5.5 back here before getting that break of 6.1, okay? And then holding off 5.8 and then triggering 6.4, 6.6. I drew this for you guys too. That's the crazy part. That would have been the healthier move, okay? This was a little too fast, too high, too fast, because we still had risk to this area back here. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Like, so there was still a lot of risk to that, to the 75.55 area. This is where I would expect some liquidity to come in, especially off 75.55, especially around 3.30, 3.36. 75.55 being re-triggered here. And it's being triggered to like the exact penny. So that would be an area that you'd probably want to see hold. Otherwise, this is where the means could get recycled back down. Okay. And a lot of this has to do with going too high too fast. We definitely did not need 6.6, 6.8. All we really needed on a break of 6.150 was 6.4. Okay. So same sort of idea. It's kind of like how they kind of left like room in here. It's been relatively close to like 3 and 4 points. Is the same thing as how they broke more range than what was required. Okay, above 6.4. Do you see what I'm saying? They broke 4 points above 6.4. Okay, after holding roughly 4 points or 3 points, 3.5 points above 5.5, it kind of keeps some risk in between because we didn't really need to break that high. And we also could have afforded to have gone a bit lower back here. This is how I knew that volatility could pick up. They didn't take it low enough. They saved this risk. They took it too high. Does this make sense? Let me know if that makes sense to you guys. It's a very important concept to try to grasp. Okay, and some people might not be able to grasp that, but it's very, very important. Because this is how I could tell that volatility could pick up here. I would have preferred that they backtested 5.5 back in here. And maybe only, if they had triggered maybe like closer to 6.4 here, that would have been a little bit healthier, okay? So let's see. This kind of leaves it for a potential volatile last half of the day. So they really would have to snap back over 7.558, 7.559 to avoid getting back down to 4.8. Excellent covers, you guys, up there. Especially if you took some off around here or off 6.6. Like I said earlier, you don't have to copy me. I think this is a pretty big spot. I could tell how they reacted around 327, 328, 330, 332 that they likely could bring this back down to 5.5. I already knew that there was still risk down to 5.5 because we never even back tested 5.5 back here. So again, a lot of it is based on how you think of risk and how you kind of take on volatility. Like I know that they could have taken back down 5.5, but I also know that if they don't get back over 5.859, they could easily bring this back to 4.8. Okay, so I'm prepared to fully cover those last contracts that I have left for today. if they don't retrace. And they'd have to retrace, I would say, before the last 15. So 75.58, 75, 75.59, 25. Pretty big spots here for ES to try getting back over if it wants to try keeping some momentum alive above 6-1. I'm just going to set some alerts. Again, you could also measure those 38-minute intervals. I kind of stopped measuring, but I think they would be probably close to end of session off these highs, like maybe around like, yeah, they are around like 3:56, 3:57 p.m. I hope you guys had a good trading session today, though. What do you guys think? Is our highs in for the session? I wanted to put up a poll before the last half hour, but I wasn't fast enough. I think maybe now it's actually better. Max range for session, I'll say for real-time session. Highs are in. 7.5, 6.8, 7.5, 7.1, 7.5, 7.3, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 7.8, 7.5, 8.1. Okay, I'll leave that set to 5 minutes for you guys to vote. These are extremely pinnable spots for the close, so again, well, you can't just say nope. Nope if they take out 5.859 in the next few minutes. Absolutely not if they don't, and if they come back beneath 5.1, 5.2. So you have to have very strict conditions for that to be the case. I'm going to mute myself here for a bit, guys, okay? Yes, Brendan, end of quarter, exactly. It's end of Q2, end of month, multiple flips. But also, there's the 38, 39 minute interval is around 3:56, 3:57 today. So that being said, there are very late odds. But again, like I just said, only way of highs being taken out is if they clear this 5.8, 6.1 in the next, well, I said next 4 minutes, but that was like 2.5 minutes ago. So around like 3:45, 3:46. Okay, so they'd have to take out 5.8. Okay, 5.875, 6.1. Like basically what they'd have to do, you guys can hear me, right? I put my mic back on. Is they'd have to take this out and do it fast, right off 3:45. 7559 being retested here, 7560.75. This was the only odd that we had. It was a very, very short 3 to 4 minute window to get back over 5.8 and 6.1. 6.1 retest by 345, 346 was the idea. And this is on a 7555 hold, okay? So they'd have to hold 7554, 7555, clear 6.1. And then have that window before 350 to get back over 6.4. That's the only way that they can get back to high of day, okay? Otherwise, those odds are off the table, okay? You can kind of see how they stalled 5.8. 75.56. I would imagine volatility would increase here. 75.62.5. Just be very cautious, you guys, because I would expect volatility the last 10 minutes of today's session. And you can see a clear 6.1 stall here. So 4.6, 4.8, 50. These are kind of the cutoffs for getting any sort of structure break. They're basically battling 6.1 and 5.2. Okay. So you can think of it as like 5.2 to 6.4 in terms of like the bottom of the means versus top of the means. And then like the mid range is between like 5.4 to 6.1. I'll just reset some of these alerts here too. Majority of you think that we're going to go to 75, 73, 75, 75. We haven't even triggered 6.8. You guys are overly optimistic sometimes. Maybe if they had cleared 6.1 here and then snapped 6.4 to follow, but like this reduction stick right here was how many points? 5 points? I bet that would have probably cleared 6.4. Yeah, it would have. Okay. Something like this as early as 3.45, 3.46, okay, but at this point in the day, they'd really need some like massive stick break at 3.50 or something. Or 3.48. I am so dehydrated. That walk wouldn't have been a bad idea now, Ashley. Honestly, I had cells put in anyway off 7561 breaks. I could have just put my seller in and gone for a walk. Of selling into the close. Yeah, they could be if they want to take it back to like that mid supply, Brendan. Remember that that visual I drew of like how they could keep it stuck and then go inside range or whatever for the next 2 days and then flag it up. That would be that scenario. That means they bring it back beneath 4.9. But if they want to keep excuse me, if they want to keep momentum alive, they need it above 5.5. 75.40, 75.38, that area there keeps it more at risk of going inside the next 2 days. What happened to these levels here? Oh. What time is it? So we only have 1 minute to go here till 3:50, and they're still above 5.5 but still beneath 6.1. So it's a pretty clear battle here, you guys, that like they obviously have to take out one end or the other. So they're gonna have to either take out 6.1 or they're gonna have to take out this 5.1, 5.2 area. Okay, taking out 6.1 gets you odds of 6.5, 6.6 break. Taking out 5.4, 5.2 gives you an odd of going back to the channel. So okay, I need to focus because I have contracts for Thursday and I still have some left for today. So remember, bears progress beneath 5-1. Bulls progress above 6-1. Anywhere in between here, it's just stuck. So it needs a 5-8, 5-9 structural break for bulls to have any sort of advantage. And you'd need a 6-7-5, 5-1 and 50 break for bears to have any sort of real advantage, even beneath 5-2 probably. Seven five five eight is 7,500. Yeah, that's a really good point too with SPX. So you can kind of think of overhead, guys, on SPX as our 7511. So you know how 7511 is a huge spot? So 7511 on SPX, huge overhead. Okay, it's going to be the same thing as like our core spot. So we'll see here. I think if ES can get back over 5-8, which is basically the 7,500 break, maybe SPX has that odd of 7511, which would be the same thing as ES hitting 7568 to 71, right? A lot of this is going to mean that it has to have like those really big structure breaks, and probably within like the next 2 minutes before the close. Remember, we have odds today super late. 354, 355 are common, but we also have a calculated odd today at 3:56 and 3:57 p.m. I don't know. I feel like if they can get over 6-1, you guys, by 3:54 and tag 6-4, 6-6, then we could still get our 7-1. They never broke down 7-5, 5-1, 5-2. Like, they held our red zone. They held it exactly, too. Do you guys see this? But they need strength off 54 and 55 before this 3:57 and 3:56 calculated time. These are calculated times. I'll mark them in yellow. These are generic times of day that we always have market movement around. So, and that's interesting that SPX 7511 would be our core break. So 7511 on SPX is the same thing as 7571 on ES. Okay? Which was my max range for today's session. I don't know. What do you guys think? 7568, 75, 75, 70, 75, 71.50. You think it could trigger? If they get a good structure break, like I said, off 5-5 over 6-4, there's a probability. This is what I saved my end of day contracts for, just in case they give us that break. And if they hold 5-2, 5-5, they need strength though, again, like I said, over 6-4. I think they need at least to close over 61.50 off this 355 stick. I'm just going to delete this so I can see it better. Did they tag 6-4? Yeah, they did. 75.64 tagged at 355. I think this candle has to close at least over 6-1 to keep that odd in play for 356, 357. I did have an odd for 406 today, so there could be a move after the bell today, you guys, for anyone trading SPY or ES. But again, this 6-4 area would be required to break. Let me just put some alerts at 6-4-2-5, and then 6-6 is pretty important here too. I don't think I have a mark at 6-8, but I'm just going to mark 6-7. These were the calculated times. So far a little bit slow in progression. We'll see if it can clear off that 357. These are also very pinnable ranges anyway, like in between 5-5, 5-7, 5-8, 6-1. And like Brendan was saying, that's also 7,500 SPX. So 6-4 is a big wall, and you can kind of see it stalled there. 5-7 was kind of the cutoff period for the 6-4 break to tag 6-6. So we'll see. There's still odds here. Look at that first second break, you guys, off 357. 357. Look at that 5-second break. Did you see that? 357 is that 39-minute interval. Okay. 6-4, also using my generic range theory, that's the top of the means, okay? 6-4, 6-5 is top of the means. Anything above 6-6 is generally once you start hitting a core range. So like 6-6, 6-8. I think as long as they can keep this above 6-1, 50 and take out 6-4 before that final minute, then there's some odds for real time. But so far, this is looking like they might break after the close. We'll see. Okay, I'm going to focus, guys, because I still have some contracts left. I don't want to miss an exit or something. The 6-4 retested off 357. This is 358, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do they do it in real time or do they wait till after the bell? Quickly. 6-4 stalling is pretty bad. They do have to take out 6-4. I feel like they can't get structure breaks without a 6-4 break. There's no way. But they definitely could see a break here after the close. I was thinking that they pin this closer to like 75, 55, 58, 61, 64. And that's a pretty big reduction stick here off 358. And they also left volatility because they didn't trigger 5-1, 5-2. 7 points here is very close to being our 7-1 target. Look at that range reduction, you guys. That range reduction was my max range off 7-5, 7-1, 7-5. Okay, so that's likely not a coincidence. Careful with the volatility into the close. They definitely left some of that risk on. And they did that intentionally because they knew that there was still some risk to go back to 4-4, 4-8. And they took it all the way back to 4-1 and 3-8 here. There could be some volatility into the close, you guys, so just be very careful. That's why I really wanted to make sure I was managing my position into the close. I didn't want to end up getting stuck or something. Either way, really clean structure breaks this afternoon, you guys. I think that they did a really good job in keeping volatility open, but also managing it appropriately. I already knew that with this kind of break here that they could easily take this back, especially if they stall 6-4. If you wanted to de-risk a little bit before tomorrow, you can. There is a flip at 406. Again, they'd probably need back over that 5-5 mark for any sort of like good structure breaks to occur here. I would still be a little bit cautious just because obviously these are some pretty volatile moves into the close, but these are all accounted for, I would say. Okay, I finished covering, guys, the rest of my positions. I feel like this is a pretty good area to close in. I hope we can get over 75.55. That was my ideal area. They ended up hitting that. Yeah, exactly. We had that risk of going back to 75.38, especially on a failure of 75. 55, 75, 51. They held right off that 4448, so closed above, which is what can keep odds. Because remember how I said, Brendan, that 7544, 7549, they could take this back, especially on hold of 7538. They can take it back to 7555. So anything above 7555 into the close, again, I think is a pretty constructive close. We'll see what tomorrow brings. 76.11 is still going to be our big target for the week. I'm not sure if they'll give us full range for the week, but I mean, we'll see what they can do for tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to try getting a walk in before it starts pouring rain. So